Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so Ben Shapiro is becoming one of the unsung heroes of the Trump administration. He has been one of Trump's most ardent supporters, and especially on issues of war, on Trump's warmongering, and on Trump's constant, unquestioning defense of Israel, and in the case of Iran, offense on behalf of Israel. Ben Shapiro is fully on board. So Ben Shapiro is an example of a conservative who was kind of a neocon before. He is much more consistent than Trump has been on this issue of Iran and war in general, especially in the Middle East. And so he didn't like Trump at first, just like people like Lindsey Graham didn't. And then as Trump was able to, violate and kind of rig various institutions of America, like he did with the Supreme Court, to make it so that something like Roe versus Wade would get overturned, which is something that all of those judges said would never happen, because of Trump's ability to finagle and kind of scam his way into enormous wins for the conservative movement, Ben Shapiro has been won over by him over the years. So now that in Trump's second administration, he is running afoul of what he promised a lot of people, what a lot of the newer coalition of Trump voters thought he was going to do. And so he's abandoning a lot of those things, like being anti-war, being anti-corruption, etc. And he's pretty much nakedly going about all the same corruption and war that Americans have been seeing for decades and are sick of. So in the face of that, especially given the opportunity to defend Israel, Ben Shapiro has been out front defending the Trump administration, defending their policy on Israel, and going after people like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, for not being pro-Israel enough. So here, in a couple clips from the past couple of days from Ben Shapiro, he is talking about the resignation of Joe Kent, which was a Trump administration official who resigned over this Iran war. He was working underneath Tulsi Gabbard, and said that, there was no imminent threat from Iran, and this whole thing is a lie. So he resigned. Ben Shapiro obviously needs to run defense of the administration on that, and is also pulling people like Theo, Tucker Carlson, and Candace Owens into it to take a couple shots. So let's listen to that.
Well, this morning, Joe Kent quit his job at the National Counterterrorism Center and issued a scathing letter designed to undermine President Trump. The letter is deeply, deeply conspiratorial. It states openly that, quote, Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. Now, that is conspiracy trash. It's also kind of strange, since President Trump has said that it's conspiracy trash. So apparently, Trump is so deeply, deeply enthralled to those strange, powerful American lobbies. We're not going to say it, that he apparently has been so bamboozled by them that he's still under the impression that he's his own man. But here's the thing. President Trump is his own man. He makes his own decisions. And as per our usual arrangement, Trump's critics are cowards who are simply unwilling to acknowledge that Trump is the one making the call. But Joe Kent continued, quote, early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pre-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States and that should you strike now, there was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie, and is the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. Again, the idea here seems to be that President Trump is a moron, misled into war by nefarious Israelis and unnamed influential members of the American media. Don't say it. Again, apparently, President Trump has no agency and no thoughts. Kent's letter is replete with this conspiratorial idiocy, including, as we just saw, the idea that it was Israel that forced the original Iraq war, an idea totally and utterly unsupportable by any evidence, given the fact that the actual prime minister of Israel at the time, Ariel Sharon, opposed the Iraq war. This stuff is brain rot. Now listen, we should all be thankful for Joe Kent's long and honorable military service. We can also be glad that he's leaving, since his ideology is the same as that of Tucker Carlson, the guy who says that the war is disgusting and evil and who has been busy sexting with the mullahs. Tucker Carlson calls Kent a personal friend and, quote, the bravest man I know. Frankly, I think that it is a good thing that Kent is not in this position. We cannot have a director of counterterrorism who is somehow advocating preemptive surrender to the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism in the middle of a war. Some in the MAGA influencer class are freaking out about the heartbreaking loss of former MTV host Theo Von. And hey, if you've lost Theo Von and his vast arsenal of foreign policy expertise, you must be in trouble, serious trouble. Here was Theo Von, who could not spot Israel on a map, if spotted Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, and the Mediterranean Sea. He was very, very upset about what's going on in a region of the world that he legitimately could not find.
It feels like there's this war machine, and then our soldiers are put into these spaces, and they're just there to serve an America that they believe in. And it's no knock against them or anything like that. It's just, it just feels like it's causing a lot of pain and fear. And yeah, I don't understand I don't understand Trump's relationship. I don't understand our political, like, why we are so beholden to this government, this Israeli government that just seems to be obsessed with control.
Hey, man. Hey, bro. Hey, dude. If business in front, party in back hosts aren't with you, who is? I mean, aside from 90% of actual MAGA. The myth-making about the war in Iran is indeed a motivated op. It is designed to undermine support for the war. It is also meant to damage President Trump. Let's be real about this. All these people who are avoiding saying Trump's name because they're cowards, this entire op is designed to damage President Trump. And it's not going to work because Trump has the loyalty of his followers and his voters, and they trust him to do the right thing here by a margin of 9-1. But this whole thing does demonstrate the deep and abiding desire by some, both in the legacy media and in the grievance party right, to use this moment to supplant Trump. Some aren't being particularly shy about it. Candace Owens, for example, points for honesty, quote, Joe Kent is an American patriot, hero, and veteran. Trump is a shameful president. May American troops take his lead and look into conscientious objection to Bibi's red heifer war. Goyim stand down. Points to the crazy lady who talks to ghosts, at least for honesty. Tucker Carlson only hints at this. He's still too chicken to say Trump's name. Marjorie Taylor is actually doing even more. She's busily calling Trump a traitor to MAGA, which is kind of like calling Thomas Edison a traitor to the light bulb. But make no mistake, Trump is still very much in control of MAGA, and when he wins the war, that control will solidify even further, as it should.
All right, so it's interesting what Ben Shapiro's doing here. So he's saying that MAGA is fully behind Trump, 80%, or in some cases he's pointing to data that is saying 35% of MAGA would support ground troops in Iran, 35% wouldn't. And he's taking that to mean that there's no split in MAGA. Seems like the opposite to me. Seems like there's a decent amount that don't support that and a decent amount that do. But it's true that there seems to be a huge consensus of MAGA voters that are behind this war. So we're talking about the coalition of MAGA, people who consider themselves MAGA and behind Trump. And so you see the outer layers of that are what is starting to unravel. People who have public reputations or are starting to feel the pressure from having backed this presidential candidate who is now doing things that are incredibly unpopular. So even if MAGA is fully behind this, which I don't even know how much I believe that. I mean, we should never underestimate MAGA as a base's ability to go along with whatever Trump wants to do. But at the same time, you're seeing some insane poll. There was a poll that CNN put out that shows that Trump has 100% approval rating of MAGA. I mean, that's an insane poll. That's ridiculous. There's no way that's real. Something seems to be going on with the polls. And one of the original threats when Trump was coming into office the second time is that he would do that. He would try to get behind the scenes and sort of rig the numbers a little bit, like specifically on the economy, to make it look like jobs were doing better than they are and stuff like that. So that type of stuff is complicated to rig and to put sort of political intentions behind. But he is certainly trying to do that in the case of the Fed as well. And it seems to me that it would be easier for him to rig Republican-based polls and Republican-leaning polls more so than like the broader polling apparatus of America. Just a thought. I don't know. I haven't done a deep dive into that. But there seems to be something weird about the fact that we're going to this war, this immensely unpopular war, and all of a sudden we're getting 100% approval ratings for MAGA. That's like dictator shit. So I don't know what's going on with that. But What I do know is that the coalition of MAGA is not really what matters here. It's a powerful and pertinent coalition that has held strong, and as much of it seems to be astroturfed, it's also been enormously influential in our culture. You know, buoyed Trump and got him into office twice now on 2 separate occasions. But the real issue is that the broad popularity that Trump had built up in this second time around, for some reason, in this second election, there was a little bit more of a sense that Trump was a broadly popular figure, he was a broadly normal figure, and there was something about him that America liked, and so that legitimized him even more. So that's falling apart. And people, I don't know if they'll ever come to the conclusion that, like, it's necessary to take a few steps back and realize that narratives about Trump that are 10, 20 years old at this point were always correct. Like going back to the birther movement, the guy's just fucking racist, right? But people forgot about that. And so it's become this whole other conversation. So that popular shield that he had against what's pretty obvious, that this dude is a piece of shit and also a moron, as Ben Shapiro sarcastically states, that's starting to come back to the forefront a little bit more. So what I don't know is how that's going to metastasize into a popular conversation going forward. I've talked about on this podcast how the brand of Democrats is bad, and you have a lot of corporate Democrats that want to be able to just kind of keep the party going with normal liberal politics, and that's not going to cut it. First of all, those candidates are going to lose, but also if they take power, they are going to fail to protect the country from another Trump-like figure, just like they did in this last recent round of Democrats winning all 3 branches of government. So this split that's happening with MAGA here is actually pretty important, because you have people like Theo who is, I would say, distinct from Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, who are seasoned right-wing grifters. Theo decided that he wanted to get involved in that. That was the side of the political spectrum that he leaned on, and he liked seeing himself around those type of people. So he's in that world now. But he's not a serious political commentator, not even to the extent that Candace Owens is, and I don't think she is either. But Theo what he is he's a lifestyle, a cultural figure. He's a personality. And so the personalities for a while were siding with Trump because they liked the way that Trump was branding them. But now they don't like it anymore. It's a bad brand. And the more Trump digs into things that people didn't quite realize they were voting for, like this war in Iran, which actually is pretty consistent with things that Trump has said about Iran in the past. The only thing he's flip-flopped about is whether or not he's anti-war. But this is a consistent thread of conservative ideology and rhetoric when it comes to Iran. So it's not surprising at all that he did this. And it is only morons that fell for it and thought that he wasn't going to do this. That's why Ben Shapiro is thrilled. Ben Shapiro is getting exactly what he paid for when it comes to Trump. He mentions that he voted for Trump 3 times, and it is the Ben Shapiros of the party that Trump is pleasing with this stuff on Iran. So that is important, because Ben Shapiro thinks that he is on the right side of this. He thinks this is all going to turn out swell and that Trump is going to be more popular than ever. Or even if he doesn't care about that, he genuinely thinks that the outcome of this situation is going to be good and good for America, etc. So the rest of the country doesn't feel that way. The rest of the country is fatigued with these type of wars and fatigued by the type of lies that seem to get us into these wars. And so by saying that what Kent is saying here is not true and ridiculous, and it's possible that there's some like exaggeration, this Kent guy has also supported these type of strikes in Iran in the past. And so I'm not sure exactly at what point he landed on this more anti-war with Iran position, but it seems to me that Trump put people like him in place on purpose. If he didn't want people like that in the administration, he wouldn't have put them there. And clearly those people have much less of a voice than the war hawks who have convinced him to go to war with Iran. So Ben Shapiro, in order to impugn that side of the administration to the extent that they even are actually anti-war, in order to impugn them, he essentially has to make the same argument that one would make in order to justify the war in Iraq. And the information that led to the war in Iraq, the information that was disseminated to Congress and to the American people that led up to us going to war there, which we later found out was mostly, if not completely, bullshit, and got us into literally a 20-year-long war. So the thing that Ben Shapiro is going to come up against here is that people can sense that bamboozle. And Ben Shapiro is trying to make you think you're crazy for seeing that Trump got bamboozled by this. Because what they can do is they can create a narrative using this intelligence and using these briefings that make it seem like a bulletproof case that this or that is going to happen. And you've seen them do this with Democrats as well. Whereas only now you're starting to see some skepticism from Democrats about the narrative that they're getting in these security briefings behind the scenes, that this was inevitable, Iran was going to do this and that, it was an imminent threat. And being able to question those type of war hawk narratives that come from deep within the government. These are military officials and intelligence officials, many of whom are not subject to being rotated out when the president is rotated out. So I don't know about the credibility of this Joe Kent guy or what exactly is going on behind the scenes here. What's the play with him and Tulsi Gabbard, and, you know, how honest it is their opposing of this war in Iran. But what I do know is that what he's saying about it is aligned with what the general population thinks about this war. And that is different from the MAGA base. Of course, we know about the MAGA base that they're going to go along with Trump, whether it's 80% or 100% or whatever the hell. But there's a lot more people who were convinced of the Trump narrative because they were convinced that Trump was something different, even though he had been president already and laid the groundwork for a lot of what he's doing now. People viewed Trump because of his personality as a different type of leader. So that's gone now. And the only hope is that Iran turns out exactly the way that they want, and they get to not only claim victory, but like the prices go down and everything goes back to normal and it's all beautiful. And Ben Shapiro's kind of pretending that that's what's going to happen. He goes through these war plans that he has gamed out and how he thinks this can go down, and they're targeting the police stations in Iran and all this. And I think that he's clearly overestimating how much they have this planned out, how much they are even pointing towards any particular outcome in this war at all. I don't think they have enough control over that situation to even game it out to that point. But he's also kind of auditioning to them. He's trying to get this message across to them. This is Ben Shapiro speaking to an audience of one when he says clearly Donald Trump is his own man. He's making his own decisions, and that's why he's exactly doing the right thing by going to Iran. He is clearly trying to continue to solidify in Trump's mind that this is the right and brave thing to do, and you shouldn't listen to anybody who's trying to tell you that you've been manipulated into doing this, even though we can all see that that's what happened. So what's going to happen at the end of that is really the question. Because we can all see it, and it's going badly. This is not going like Venezuela, where it's over in a matter of hours and they get to brag about how cool their shit works. There is major destruction happening in Iran right now. There is oil fields being blown up and then retaliation happening that is going to disrupt the economy in completely unpredictable ways, and ways that Trump and his Republican Party are very deeply connected to. Gas prices is something that they run on over and over again. And if they get into office and immediately skyrocket gas prices in a way that doesn't bounce back, that's going to like destroy the Republican Party, like potentially even worse than what has happened to Democrats in the last couple years. So the thing that I think is interesting about this is that at some point, Trump, as the main personality cult leader of this whole sort of fractured situation, eventually Trump's not going to be there anymore. Either he's going to die, or they're going to remove him from office on the 25th because this is going to get too insane, or he's going to get impeached after the midterms. It's not likely that Trump will maintain the support that he has, that he needs to sustain himself through the rest of his term. We'll see what happens. Lots of things could happen. And I would say, I don't know, there's like probably slightly above 50% chance that for some reason he doesn't continue his administration. And so what happens after that is, I think, what we're seeing glimmers of in this fight for the Republican Party. Because eventually this is going to evolve into a fight over where the right is actually going, and not just a fight over who supports Trump the most and is Trump's teacher's pet. Eventually they're going to be trying to figure out how to regain the narrative after whatever cataclysmic event leads to Trump no longer being able to be at the head of it. And that's where this destruction, both politically and the physical destruction in Iran, which is by no means a good thing, but that's where it can actually lead to like the page being turned on Trump style politics. The way he's going is his presidency is going to end in some kind of spectacular fashion. Maybe sooner than later, I don't know. But picking up on some of these threads, like the thread of how much people do not want Israel involved in our politics, how much people do not want to go to war, how people are still upset about the fact that prices and inflation are high, people are still upset about housing, people are still upset that we don't have health care. You're hearing that a little bit from the right because of this war. They're saying, why are we going to war when you haven't fixed any of our domestic problems? So I'm not saying that that means the right-wing base is all of a sudden going to flock to the left, but what I do mean is that it is an opportunity for a narrative change, and that narrative change is going to come. It's not a matter of if we as the left do it, it's going to happen. Trump eventually is going to die or leave office or something. And the reason Trump has been so politically powerful is not because he speaks to the war hawks and the conservatives like Ben Shapiro, but because he speaks to other people, more normal people beyond that. And so those are the people who are disillusioned by this and confused by this and didn't want this. And while their politics might not be any more scrutable than they were before 2024, there is an opportunity to take this anti-war sentiment, to take this America First sentiment, and turn it into something that is actually positive and actually involves reinvestment in America and doing away with this Doge-style, CEO-style austerity war hawk politics, which surprisingly nobody seems to like.
Break through and cut through the noise and give something that's actually food for thought. Feels a little bit useless. Hundreds of millions of views on things that are rotting people's brains and reactionary narratives, twisting the news.